Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Zero Five Podcast. First off, I want to start this podcast out with thanking my subscribers on Substack. By the time I release this episode, we will be crossing over 300 subscribers on Substack. We just started this about 7 months ago, and to think that this ministry that God has called us to do is now reaching 300 people. That's 300 people more than we started with. And so to viral producers, content producers out there, 300 probably doesn't sound like a lot, but to this small time operation, it's huge. And so to each and every one of our subscribers, I just want to thank you so much for your support. To our paying subscribers, I cannot thank you enough for your support for this mission that we are on, this ministry that we're trying to build in helping churches build their safety ministries and understanding that this is more than just security. It is about ministry. And so being a paid subscriber supports us an incredible amount in being able to put out this content, but also being able to keep our training that we do for other churches at the lowest possible cost. Eventually, we would love to get to the point where our subscribers are basically paying for the training for other churches to have, and we can do all of our training and consultation for free. So if you're a subscriber but not unpaid, please consider upgrading your subscription. At the very least, please consider sharing our content so we can help build this ministry to create free training and free consultation for churches everywhere, trying to build this ministry that is affecting and impacting so many lives. That's going to be some future episodes. I'm going to bring on some people that the safety ministry has positively affected their life. And so please continue to support us. And again, just thank you so much. In today's episode, I want to talk about what we call in the military or first responder world as the 80-20 rule. I don't have a lot of background in business, so I'm pretty sure that this is any organization. But the way this breaks down is it is a phenomenon that I have been noticing on my own team and talking with other church safety team leaders. They have it on their team as well. So I'm pretty sure it is a universal organizational rule. And that is that 80% of the people in your organization are they're middle of the road. They do just enough to stay qualified or to stay competent at their job. You're not going to get them to come to, in the safety team world, these are the people that they're going to serve the bare minimum hours required if you have required hours, or they're going to serve just whenever they can. They're not going to go out of their way to show up ahead of their family and leave behind their family to drive separate vehicles. They're not going to serve any more than absolutely necessary. And that's fine. 80%, if you have 80% of your team at least serving, that's a good thing. That really is. And so I never hammer on that 80%. We always hope for more participation, but if you can get 80% of your people at least doing the bare minimum, you're actually doing pretty good. So if you're a safety team leader, don't be discouraged if you don't have this just top tier level participation amongst your whole team. Embrace it. Enjoy that you have at least 80% that are a big part of your team and that are participating and doing the things necessary to be qualified and serving when you need them to serve. That is a very, very important number. The other 10%, or I'm sorry, out of that 20%, so we got 80-20. Out of that 20%, 10%, these are your top tier, hard charging, want to be the very best, want to be tier one level operators that are going well above and beyond the call of duty, for lack of a better term. These are the folks that you almost have to tell them, hey, take a break. Take a Sunday off. You're serving way too much. These are the people, these are the backbone of your safety ministry. This 10%, these are the folks that can drive the culture of your safety ministry forward. They're the ones that they recognize how dire emergency situations can be, particularly security threats, but any emergency. They understand what emergency really means, and they understand the amount of training and coordination and experience that goes into being a good, effective responder to emergencies. These these are your folks that are they're your ride or die folks. And so 10%, you're going to see that in just about any organization. We see that in the fire department where 10% are the folks that they're putting on the training, or they're trying to move the entire organization forward. That is, like I said, those people are the backbone of your ministry, and I'm going to come back to them in just a second, because we also have to talk about the other 10%. And nobody really likes to admit it, but most organizations have about a 10% rate of folks that we call, in the fire department, we call them t-shirt firefighters. They probably shouldn't be in the organization, but when you need bodies in seats, they're a body. They like wearing the t-shirt. They love claiming that they're a part of the organization. They don't do anything to move the organization forward. They may not even make the bare minimum qualifications or participation requirements for the organization. They just kind of show up, and you're really unsure what to do about them. Every organization has these folks, and typically, if you're a hard charger, if you're in that top 10%, or if you're a safety team leader, you don't know what to do about this bottom 10%. And I'm here to tell you that even though they may not quite meet the bare requirement minimums, you can still find a place for them. Because even if they want to be that t-shirt safety team member, being a part of the safety team ministry means they are a part of a ministry. They may not be the hard chargers, but they are part of a ministry. And that is what God calls out of ministries, is we want to bring people in to be a part of these communities, to find fellowship. And if they are there and the only thing that anybody is getting out of this deal is fellowship, that chalk that one up to the win column, because that person could very well be a back row Baptist. They could be the person that shows up just because their kids go to Sunday school or youth, or they show up just because their wife is making them, and they're not involved any other way. And if it were up to them, they wouldn't show up at all. But if your safety team, your safety ministry is a reason why they're showing up, and a reason why they're hearing God's word on a semi-regular basis, mission accomplished. Maybe not in the fashion that we hope it would be, but it's still mission accomplished. So yes, there is going to be a tendency among hard charging safety team leaders. And trust me, I'm one of them. I feel your pain, but it took a huge just swallow of pride on my part, and a huge bite of humble pie for me to realize that maybe they're not top tier performers, but at least they're involved, and at least they're here on a regular basis and part of something. Right. And so that is a win in the ministry column, as far as I'm concerned. And so you should never, ever boot somebody. You should never kick anybody out of your ministry, because that will have long-term lasting effects on their walk with Christ. To be kicked out of a ministry is a big deal. I have been there. I was kicked out of my youth ministry in high school. That scarred me for a long time. And so that is kind of my own personal mission, is to never kick somebody out of my ministry. However, I am going to try and bring them up. I'm going to do what I can to encourage them to participate more, to fellowship more, to train more. I am going to put some type of carrot out there that kind of forces them to train a little bit more or participate a little bit more. One of the ways I do that is our church pays for every one of our qualified safety team members to have a policy through Right to Bear. Right, Right to Bear is a personal defense insurance company. They cover you if you have to use force or use deadly force. And a lot, especially here in Texas, a lot of church insurance companies, they won't cover safety team members individually. And they may or may not allow a rider in your church's policy to cover the church if they have an armed safety team. And so the way our church kind of skirts that is we do have the rider to cover the church, but to cover the individual safety team members, the church pays for them to have a Right to Bear membership. What that then does is that gives me a little bit of a carrot to dangle that says, okay, the church is investing this amount of money in you as a safety team member. All that we are going to require from you is to serve this minimum amount of service hours per month, and you have to meet these training requirements. I don't make them crazy strict training requirements. I don't make them crazy high participation hours. It's enough that by keeping them in the loop, it keeps some of my hard chargers from getting burnt out, and it keeps them meeting at least a bare minimum level of training. So our team, we do quarterly trainings, and so quarterly mandatory training. So if you are a qualified safety team member and the church is paying for you to have a Right to Bear account, then you have to make these trainings. If you don't make these trainings and you don't make these just very small service requirements, I'm gonna have a talk with you and say, hey, listen, man, like I don't want to kick you off the team. I love having you a part of our ministry, but I am gonna have to pull your Right to Bear membership because you're not meeting the requirements. So please continue to sign up. Just understand that if you have to go hands-on with somebody or you have to use deadly force on somebody, the church's insurance probably isn't going to cover you, and you're not going to have anybody to cover you. So that's kind of the carrot that I'm able to dangle in front of that 10% to get them meeting at least the minimum requirements. All right, so that's just an idea that I'm floating out there. I'm sure there's a billion others. If you have others, please comment, because I would love to hear what other safety teams are doing out there to build up that 10%. Now, how do we move the ball forward? If we have the 80-20 rule and we still have 80% of our folks that are just barely meeting the requirements, we have some type of method to try and get the 10% to be closer to that 80%. How do we move the ball forward? How do we make our team better? How do we grow our team if we're now operating at kind of a 90-10 rule? Well, one way that you do this is you take your hard chargers, you take that top 10%, and you invest very heavily in them, right? As a church, pay for their training. Give opportunities. You know, if there's training opportunities, those folks are going to show up. So give them opportunities to train. They're probably hungry for it. If they're your go-getters, they are hungry for training. They're hungry to get better. They understand the importance of the training. They also understand that this is applicable to more than just church safety stuff. It's applicable to daily life. It's applicable to protecting your family. It's applicable to protecting yourself. And so invest in those folks. Pay for their training. Bring in extra training, right? Those folks are the ones that the better they get, the higher the bar gets raised for the rest of the 90%, right? Because they're going to put pressure on the other 90%. It's a natural thing. They're going to say, hey, man, we missed you at training. We would have loved to have you there. Or that 90% is going to see how well that 10% operates. And they're going to think, man, that was some kind of cool training. I kind of want to be a part of that. And so now you have them coming to maybe one extra training a year, and then it becomes two extra training. And so now your 90-10 rule of 10% hard chargers, 90% minimum or just less than minimum, becomes a true 80-20 to where you have 20% hard chargers. That's a big difference. That is a big difference. And that moves the culture of your ministry forward, right? Investing in your top tier performers brings everybody else up. And you're investing in the good side of the culture of your team instead of investing your energy in the bad side. If you are focusing all of your energy on that bottom 10%, trying to bring them up and or trying to get them on par with everybody else, you're neglecting your top 10%. And when you neglect your top 10%, those top tier performers start to realize, like, what am I doing this for? Nobody, they don't really care. They don't really care about the efforts that I'm putting in. So they're only worried about those folks. What am I breaking my back for? And then the bar starts to drop because you are focusing on that bottom 10% instead of your top 10%. So I highly encourage you, if you are a safety team leader, do whatever is necessary to invest in your top 10%. All right. Spend more time with them, have more outings, have more training, right? Provide more materials for them. One of the ways that my church invests in our team is they pay for the qualification ammo. And what I tend to do is if I have leftover ammo, I give it to my top 10% to train with. And so that way I'm investing in them getting better. I also make myself available to my team to go out and train whenever they want, whenever I'm available. And so what tends to happen is my top 10 percenters take advantage of that and they email me, hey Mike, can we go out to the range? All right. So now they're using ammo paid for by the church. They're getting some training time. I'm investing in them. All right. Or they show up to additional trainings that I put on. And then now they're telling the other 90%, hey, man, you missed out. This training was awesome. They show them pictures, they show them videos. And again, we're moving the ball forward. So to my safety team leaders, I know how frustrating it can be when you have a group this big pulling up the slack for this much of the group. I understand how frustrating that is. I understand how frustrating it is if you're part of this group taking up the slack for everybody else. It's tough. I understand it. Keep going though. Team leaders, invest in that 10%. Invest in those folks. Reward them for their efforts, and the rest will start to follow suit. All right. If you're part of that 80%, the bare minimum, really like step it up. All right. I'm not going to beat around the bush. You need to step it up. Now, trust me, I understand if family obligations are keeping you from serving more or from training more. Family should always come before the safety team. God, family, safety team. All right. I get it. But when you have the time available, serve more than you normally would. All right. Like I've said before in discipline over motivation, don't just rely on motivation to start serving. Have some discipline, right? Don't skip out on the second service at your church because the Cowboys are on. Right, stick around for that extra service. Record the Cowboys game on YouTube TV. We all know you can record the game. Plus, if you record the game, you can fast forward through the commercials. It's way better that way anyways. But stick around, serve. If you got a hunting or a fishing trip, schedule it for another weekend. Schedule for a weekend that your team is fully stocked and they may not need you that day. Okay. If you have kids' sporting events on Sundays, I'm not a huge fan of kids sports on Sundays. I get it. They happen. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but it is what it is. But the main point is that if you are in the 80% that's just barely squeaking by, please step it up. All right. If your safety team leader is starting to add more and more training to move the team forward, just add one additional training that you would more than you would normally go to. You might have fun. You might start to pick up on skills that you're enjoying and you're going to want some more of it. I promise you that. All of these skills, The weapons stuff, the medical stuff, like I've said before, it applies to your daily life. It applies to you protecting your family. Who doesn't want that? If your church is putting that on for you, take advantage of it. Now, if you're in that bottom 10%, if you're a t-shirt safety team member, we're glad to have you here. We are. We would really love it if you would volunteer more. We would really love it if you would train more. Because here's the deal. A team is only as good as their weakest link. Okay. We can train that top 10% to be so good that they kind of make up for your lack of training. But the more acute, the more dire the emergency, the more vital it is for everybody on the team to know what they're doing. And if you are part of that bottom 10% and you skip out on training all the time and you just barely squeak by on the requirements, you are the weakest link. So think about all the skills that you're kind of like, I'm not sure what I would do there. Think about all those things. And now understand that if you're the one that has to respond and you don't know what to do, the rest of the team crumbles. Right? And if the rest of the team crumbles because you don't know what you're doing, guess what happens to the congregation? They lose trust in the team because maybe a threat got in that shouldn't have gotten in. Maybe a medical emergency that could have been dealt with pretty easily and quickly escalated much higher because you didn't know what you were doing. All because you didn't go to training. All because you wanted the t-shirt but didn't want to put the work in. Okay? We love having you a part of our ministry, but you need to put the work in. You need to work on getting better. Okay? I get it. Sometimes you just don't want to. But go back and watch my episode on discipline over motivation. If you want to be a part of this ministry that the church has commissioned to protect the congregation, to foster an environment that your congregation can come in and worship and fellowship and hear from the Holy Spirit without having to worry about the outside world coming in and threatening them. If your church has commissioned you as a part of that ministry to do that, you have a responsibility to know what you're doing. The church's trust is in you. And if you're skipping out on training, if you're skipping out on serving, you're leaving everybody hanging out to dry. All right. So exercise some discipline. Show up to training events, right? Especially if you're team leader and team leaders, I hope you're doing this. Schedule your training events far in advance. Give your team heads up so they can work their schedules around your training. And if your team leader's doing that, my safety team members, if your team leader's doing that, schedule stuff around your safety team training. Again, if you're part of this ministry, we want you to be a part of this ministry. It's hard to fellowship when you don't show up to fellowship. And that's one of the beauties of training. Training is fun. You get to fellowship when you're doing training, right? That's how we build trust in each other. And as we build trust in each other, we have fun, we fellowship, we build community. As we build community, our community grows. And then now you went from being a bare minimum or less than minimum safety team member to now you may be mentoring somebody, right? We all want to be able to pass our knowledge on, but you got to build that knowledge first. All right. So if you're part of that bottom 10%, pray about it. Talk to your spouse about it. About, hey, I'm going to do a little more of this training. You're going to bring everybody up and you're probably going to enjoy it a lot more. I promise you that. All right. But that's kind of the breakdown of the 80-20 rule. Every organization has it, but it's how you handle it that determines whether or not your ministry moves forward or your ministry gets stuck in the mud. I've seen fire departments, I've seen first responder agencies that have been stuck in the mud because they're so focused on that bottom 10% that the other 90 can't move forward. So focus on your top 10% to pull the rest of them along. All right, invest in them. Because at the end of the day, what are we here for? We're here to protect his people and to give him the glory. We'll see you next time.